Hi, this is Holland Taylor. You can see me on a series called Brothers, which will be coming out sometime this year, and on the morning show sometime in the winter. And you're listening to U.S. Modernist Radio.
Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Oh, I don't care what Mama don't allow, gonna draw mine modern anyhow. Mama don't allow no architecture around here.
Welcome to U.S. Modernist Radio, where we talk and laugh with people who enjoy, own, create, dream about, preserve, love, and hate modernist architecture, the most exciting and controversial buildings in the world. I'm Tom Guild. We've got three fascinating guests on today's show. Shane Hood safeguards Tulsa's architectural gems. Peter Maunu lovingly restored Frank Lloyd Wright's Lamberson House in Iowa. And Emily Almloff, currently the youngest licensed architect in the U.S., is transforming hospitals across the Midwest. Then as a bonus, musical guest Danger Hall with Peter Lamb and Daniel Hall. And now your host, Mr. Modernism, George Smart.
Thanks, Tom. What's one of the least important decisions in a modernist house that takes too much time to decide? Kitchen countertops. The Broadway stage where we audition our cooking skills for family and friends. The arena where we mercilessly chop right on the surface and pretend we haven't scratched it. The sports complex where inevitably a child or a dad, usually a dad, will sling something down the length of the counter hoping to perform a bar trick, only resulting in broken glass and lots of yelling. So let's review countertops. In the 1950s, Formica was king. So many patterns. Boomerang patterns, pink and turquoise atomic patterns. These space-age Formica surfaces were easier to clean than, say, your conscience after a night of too many martinis. In the 1970s, it was the Harvest Gold and Avocado Green Apocalypse, chosen by designers with the excuse that they were warm and autumnal, but they showed remarkable resemblance to hurling after too many martinis. In the 1980s, tile countertops with thick grout overpowered the design magazines, and butcher blocks appeared, bringing rustic charm and the anxiety of harboring salmonella, which they did after a while, if not scrupulously cleaned. I rejoiced when the golden avocado went away, but they are back. And butcher blocks are back too, now called reclaimed wood, costing 17 times more. Terrazzo, that speckled wonder from mid-century airports and Mad Men office buildings, is back as the darling of design blogs. We've even forgiven Formica, rebranded as retro, and it is hard times for quartz and granite, headed into their declining years before a resurgence, say in the 2040s. Countertops are fashion's horizontal runway. What we prize soon becomes mocked, and what is mocked today becomes tomorrow's reclaimed vintage aesthetic. That hideous yellow laminate you ripped out, now it is vintage mustard minimalism. Struggling with a countertop decision? Don't. Because whatever you choose will be out of fashion in 10 years, hated in 20, and in 40, loved again. Perhaps ironically, as that's always in fashion. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by Diane Bald and the Budman family, restoring significant architecture in Toronto, Los Angeles, Malibu, and Palm Springs.
Shane Hood knows everything about Tulsa, Oklahoma's architecture, from its iconic Art Deco skyscrapers to its post-war mid-century modern homes. As principal at Align Design Group, he serves on multiple city preservation committees. Shane also worked on projects like the Kindred Scratch Kitchen, reimagining a restaurant as a space built on care and community. And he also worked on the Bike Club headquarters, which recently celebrated its topping out ceremony. Shane also loves a particular iconic American highway. Here's his conversation with George Smart.
Shane, before we talk about architecture, let's talk about a road, specifically Highway 66. It's going to have its 100th anniversary here soon.
Yeah, it is.
Very famous in Tulsa.
Yeah, really famous in Tulsa, yeah. We like to consider ourselves to be the birthplace of 66 because of Cyrus Avery being from here in Tulsa. I've lived here for 20 years, and I've seen interest in Route 66 as an amenity to who we are as a city grow exponentially. There's a lot of plans in place right now for the 100-year anniversary. A lot of grants, a lot of kind of fixing things, a lot of trying to find old neon signs and fix those things up. A lot of grants for facades and things like that on the street. But 66 runs almost, I think, the entire length of the city of Tulsa, really, from the far east side of Tulsa all the way to when you leave the west side. We had multiple different routes that came through Tulsa over time. So there's multiple parts of the cities that claims to be a part of Route 66 or attaches to it or touches it. And so there's a lot of kind of different celebrations in different parts of the town from that. And there's a ton of renewed interest now. My friend Mary Beth Babcock, who has several different businesses, in the past, I'd say few years, have brought in several of those big Muffler Man sculptures in there, just kind of really celebrating the history of Tulsa and this kind of direct tie to that road. I mean, Tulsa is not a real old city, so I think it has an identity with the automobile, with the neon sign, with the, all that kind of design growing up at the same time as it was. So 66 is a big deal. I'm looking forward to the 100th anniversary of it. Yeah.
The car culture of that time just had people want to hop in their station wagon or whatever and head across the country.
Yeah.
And see America and stop at these little roadside hotels and restaurants and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my parents are both from Southwest Missouri, and I went to college in Springfield, Missouri, which is another kind of Route 66 location. I was very familiar with it. I grew up in Sacramento, and I remember every year we would drive back from California to Missouri and to Arkansas. And even though we weren't traveling on 66, we were traveling absolutely adjacent to it. So I remember, seeing that kind of stuff. And I'm 48, so this was the 80s. It was a while past kind of the heyday of the road, but still, the remnants of those things were still there. Those neon signs or the really interesting architecture, the folded plate roof lines and googie stuff and things like that I think were some of the reasons why I got into architecture in the first place and graphics and stuff like that. But it also instilled in me a love of driving. I liked traveling that way. I liked seeing those things, stopping and seeing what was going on. And over time, as I got a little bit older, I realized it was a way of kind of understanding history and who we were as Americans and how we got to where we were, today. And I still see those things here in Tulsa. I mean, I drive down Route 66 every day to my office, about 4 miles of it. And there are the buildings that are still there that are car dealerships and things like that. And then there are the signs that are still there. And there's the little light poles that no one really knows that those light poles have been there for 60 years, but you can tell that they've been there. And I don't know, it's archaeology at my level that I enjoy. And I love sharing that kind of stuff with people anyways, that kind of history and who we are as Tulsans, really, and what our place is in this kind of like stretch from Chicago to Santa Monica.
Well, let's talk about Tulsa.
Yeah.
It's an oil town, and in the early 20th century, a huge number of Art Deco buildings got built in Tulsa, which most of them are still around, right?
Yeah, there's quite a few. I mean, if there was anything that I knew about Tulsa before I moved here, it was my friend kept telling me that we had the style of Tulsa Art Deco. I moved here 2002, 2003. That was the thing. It was Art Deco, right? It was the fact that people came here, found oil. They were accustomed to these styles of architecture and design from the East Coast, and they kind of wanted to emulate that as they found their own new money, and they wanted to kind of show each other up, and they would build these buildings that were in the newest style of architecture. And yeah, we have quite a few of those left. We've lost a lot of those as well, which is why we probably have I feel like we have a pretty strong preservation or conservation movement in Tulsa because of that. I wouldn't say we've lost any Art Deco stuff recently, but I feel like it's always a possibility. But yeah, you had architects that were coming here that were taking risks. It was kind of experimental in a sense, the type of architecture they were doing. You had people that had new amounts of money, younger individuals that kind of wanted to make a mark and have an identity for who they were. And so they were kind of leaning on the leading edge or progressive edge of architecture and design at that time to do that. And when someone would find money and want to, kind of big dog the next person or show them up, they would try to make something even more grand or more exciting. And so we have this kind of mix of really interesting Art Deco. You had some touches of Native American motifs in some of these things. So it was kind of regional in a sense, but that kicked off Tulsa's identity as a town that had, was contemporary, was modern architecture. I mean, I tell people when I give tours about this kind of stuff that Art Deco was modern. It was a modern architecture.
So let me ask, who were the architects that were active in mid-century architecture there?
Big names would have been Murray Jones Murray, for instance. That was Lee Murray, David Murray, Bob Jones. They were here 50s, 60s, 70s. They had a firm that was called Murray Jones Murray. The architect who designed my neighborhood, Donald Hahn, moved here from Illinois when they had won a international competition for a JC's building here. He was teamed up with actually Hideo Sasaki.
Okay.
You had Charlie Ward, who was a local architect. Bruce Goff was here.
Sure. Right. From Oklahoma.
Yeah, he was practicing here when he was a teenager, when he was 13 years old, designing houses for Rush Endicott Rush. You had Joseph Koberling, who was one of those architects that was we would consider kind of a tween. He was doing deco, and then it kind of went into kind of mid-century, but there in the 40s and 50s, it was kind of a mix. Koberling was actually a fellow student with Bruce Goff here at Tulsa High School. At that time, Donald McCormick, Robert Buchner, who had worked with Raymond Loewy, in New York, and then moved to Kansas and then found himself in Tulsa. He actually was the architect of our Tulsa Foundation for Architecture headquarters. Blaine Immel was another local guy who went to the University of Oklahoma and was there when Goff was actually one of the professors, or was actually the director of the school. You see people who are kind of inspired by that Goff, Frank Lloyd Wright, organic lineage. I know that Richard Neutra was involved in the civic master plan for some time, had done some work, and it never kind of came to fruition. But, City of Tulsa had reached out to him working on that. O'Neill Ford did a house here. Edward Durrell Stone did a building down on the Civic Center, the kind of commercial plaza for the city of Tulsa. Of course, Frank Lloyd Wright did a house here.
West Hope, right?
Yep, West Hope. And then he also had Price Tower up in Bartlesville, which is only really about 40 minutes away. So it's close to here. There were a lot of people that were kind of floating around and doing stuff, and not being from here, only really knowing about the Art Deco part of it. When I got here, I realized, well, there's a whole bunch of really interesting architecture here that's not just the Art Deco. Sometimes when you go all out preserving one style of architecture, everything else kind of gets shut out. And so this mid-century stuff was really not anybody's cup of tea at that time. Funny enough, I'd been interviewed multiple times about saving ugly buildings, and that was kind of what people were referring to these things as at that time, which I would say they still do in some instances. But there was a lot of really interesting local architects who had pedigree. I mentioned Murray Jones Murray. Bob Jones studied at IIT with Mies. And if you look at his work, if you look at Tulsa Airport, if you look at the old City Hall, you can absolutely see that structure expressed. Those are the stories that I find really interesting about Tulsa, that we had this direct connection to this kind of international design pedigree here.
In addition to oil as an industry for Tulsa, aviation has been a big part of its history for a long time. Mm-hmm. At one point, it was the busiest airport in the world and still serves as a perfect midway point for airlines and their maintenance. American has a huge maintenance facility there, which they are expanding to fix all their planes.
Correct.
And your airport, as you mentioned earlier, was very well known for being quite mid-century modern. Is it still there mostly, or has it been unfortunately renovated?
No, I think with any airport that was built 60 years ago now, there's going to be some renovations and things like that. But when you pull up to the airport, it is still the Murray Jones Murray designed international airport. And I give a lot of that credit to Bob Jones for understanding pretty early that air travel was going to be jet age, that it wasn't going to be propeller based, that it was going to be larger planes, that it needed to be 2 stories, that it was going to have, all these things that was going to need to happen, that he ended up working hard to convince the city of Tulsa to implement into the new airport. So when you pull up, it's still there. It's still the exposed steel, still the flooring, still there, the aggregate panels. You can still see it as a kind of a Miesian influence design by Murray Jones Murray. And Bob Jones had a relationship with Julius Schulman, had Julius Schulman photograph most of his projects. So when you look at some of Schulman's photographs of the airport, there's one particular that I have framed here in the house where it is the airport and in the sky is the jet with the contrail taking off in the background.
Wow.
With this perfect connection between future of aviation and what the future of airport architecture needed to be or what it needed to express. And so, yeah, it is still there. I know people who are in charge at the airport who I can, sometimes grab the ear of and say, hey, if we're doing things out here, whatever we're doing, remember, like, Tulsa is a city who has architecture as an amenity. It has people coming here to visit our architecture. And this is the first thing that they walk into. And it's an important piece of architecture. And so it needs to still read that way.
That's great. Now, when people come to visit Tulsa, what are some of the modernist buildings they should go see? Or are there any local organizations that do tours?
Yeah, so actually, this is my first year off. I was on the board of the Tulsa Foundation for Architecture for 18 years. That's where I would start. We do all kinds of different tours around town. Everything from modern to the deco to oil baron stuff to, tunnel tours and kind of weird one-off things that people just have kind of general interest about. But if you're interested in modern architecture, my neighborhood, Lortondale, that I live in, was built between 1954 and 1956 by architect Donald Hahn. It was planned as a 450-unit modernist development, contemporary housing development, 4 different pools for every 120-something houses, 30-something houses. They built about half the neighborhood, but we have been able to kind of popularize it. It's now a place where people want to live. People move in here that are kind of sensitive to the houses, understand it, like the design, want something different, not just cookie cutter neighborhood. It was the neighborhood where the people who worked at University of Tulsa, professors, musicians, artists, architects, and things like that lived in the 50s and 60s, and it's come full circle. ORU is another interesting thing. ORU was done in the 60s by a guy named Frank Wallace. It was complete campus design. Earl Roberts was really interested in World's Fair design. He would take his people. I want to say they went to like the 1958 World's Fair in Brussels. I think they went to Seattle in 62 and definitely to New York in 1964. He really liked that idea. And so if you looked at ORU, it was supposed to be a campus for the electric televised ministry. And I think he realized that TV was coming around and people wanted to see something that looked progressive. So the campus really kind of looks like a World's Fair campus.
I had no idea. I would think a campus like that would be more classical and Gothic.
Yeah, I think everywhere else was. And I think he realized that in the 60s that maybe there was a need for something different. I think it's the optics being on TV. He was coming into people's living rooms weekly, asking for money and doing all that kind of stuff. And this was the backdrop. And I think he thought that this is what maybe people wanted to see at that time. It's really interesting. There's a Buckminster Dome. There was, and this is kind of what I was going to get to. The current administration, they kind of see that as old and attached to history, and they are now starting to kind of want to put their new stamp on it. So I think a lot of that stuff is threatened. The dome, for instance, is gone. They took the dome out, which is unfortunate. But there's still plenty of like new formalism, wild stuff down there that is, most people would think of as kind of a Jetsons type aesthetic or something. And then, there's just around town, there's just interesting kind of stuff. West Hope is a great house.
Well, let me ask you about that. Let me ask you about West Hope. So it's been on the market for quite a while.
Yeah.
How come it's not selling?
I don't know. I mean, I think they were asking $7 million for it.
That's expensive for Tulsa.
It is. I know there was a $14 million house that sold in Tulsa, though, a couple of years ago. So I don't think it's out of the question. Maybe a Frank Lloyd Wright house is difficult to live in, I guess, if that makes sense. I mean, there's other houses that you can buy for that much where you're not going to have everyone's eyes in the world on you. Whereas a Frank Lloyd Wright house, if you do that, you have everybody's eyes on you, no matter what. So I think they're trying to find somebody that is sensitive to the house. I know the people who own the house. They're good stewards of it, so I'm not too concerned about it.
That's good.
I know also where it's located. So I know that for that much money, you can't buy that lot and split it up and build houses and make enough money to make it, valuable to anybody.
That's
so
good.
In a way, it's being preserved by this. I know that people in town love it.
I know it's been up for auction a couple times.
Yeah.
But that never really followed through.
Yeah. And the thing is about it, anytime that I've had friends come and I tell them that we have a Frank Lloyd Wright house, I think people just immediately think that we have kind of Usonian, prairie type house since we're in Oklahoma. And that's not what we have. We have a concrete block house. We have something similar to the Ennis house in LA or something. It was, in the 20s and 30s. It was that type of Frank Lloyd Wright house. It wasn't, the type that you might see up in Iowa or over in Bentonville where they moved one of those houses. And so it always surprises people when they go to visit it and see that it's not that type. We've always joked around that they could just donate it to the Tulsa Foundation for Architecture, and we would, happily.
Exactly. They could get a great tax deduction, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think we'll just have to work on that for a few years.
Well, please let them know that I heartily support that plan.
I definitely would do that, yeah.
Well, Shane, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a pleasure.
Well, yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Really appreciate what you guys do for modernism and also for archiving. It's an invaluable resource online for free. Appreciate it.
That was George's conversation with Tulsa's Shane Hood. Peter Maunu is a musician and design enthusiast who lovingly restored Frank Lloyd Wright's Jack Lamberson House in Oskaloosa, Iowa, between 2009 and 2016. Who knew there were Wright houses in Iowa? Actually, there are quite a few. When not restoring architectural gems, Peter makes music, performing with legends like Jean-Luc Ponty, the Pointer Sisters, and Bobby McFerrin. Here's George and Peter Maunu.
Peter, before we talk about your house, let's talk about Group 87. I've been listening to some of these songs and tunes, and you guys were like so avant-garde. It's incredible.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, this idea came about in the 70s. I did a lot of playing with Mark Isham, who is a film composer now. And we actually grew up together because his mother was my violin teacher. My musical training is as a classical violinist. So I met Mark way back in high school and we started playing music together. He's a quite established A-list film composer. And Patrick O'Hearn, the bass player, was the bass player for Frank Zappa. But I met him when he was 18. I think I was 19. And we've been playing music together ever since. Pat and I still are working on projects together. But the idea of that band was sort of how would we take some of the ideas that we were really into at that time, which was like mainly Weather Report and Miles Davis. How would we take that into more of a sort of a mashup of New Wave and Weather Report? And it seems so off the wall, and it actually probably for its time was a little bit too experimental. But in retrospect, I started to hear a lot of things after that that were very similar. It was an all-instrumental band, no vocals. That also made it tough in trying to break into kind of a pop market to be an instrumental group. But Peter Wolf played some keyboards. Terry Bozzio was the drummer. He was also Zappa's drummer. So the level of musicianship within the band was pretty astounding.
Well, if you want to hear Peter in Group 87, there are lots of tracks on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Peter, you were also part of a very famous night on the Arsenio Hall show. What happened then?
Well, I was the guitarist for the Arsenio Hall. He called it his posse. And so I did that every night for like 5 years. I missed one night, which was when our son was born. But I was there when Bill Clinton was on, and he put on the Ray-Ban sunglasses and played saxophone with us. And also Hillary Clinton was there. So, yeah, that was a momentous occasion for me. At the time, I could understand this guy's immense charisma. When I heard him play the saxophone, I thought, oh, is this guy, he's not really a musician or anything. I went back and listened to it, and he was just wailing. I mean, we played Heartbreak Hotel, and he killed it, you know? The purpose of that was to clear up the Jennifer Flowers mess.
Yes.
If anybody remembers that.
And then he had a bigger mess to fix later on, but that's another story.
Oh, he had so many messes that he weaseled out of, but he was charming, you know? And then he won the election, and he invited the whole band to go to Washington, D.C., and we played for his inauguration party with Little Richard.
Oh, super cool.
Which was really wonderful. And then he sent us all these bomber jackets with the presidential seal on the inside of the jacket, which I still have, and occasionally I'll wear it.
Now, Peter, let's get to your house. When did you even think about buying a Frank Lloyd Wright house?
Oh, I think I always fantasized about it. In 1968, we moved to San Francisco, to the Bay Area. And my father had a very sophisticated boss who said, you need to check out the Eichler houses.
Yeah.
So my father, who really respected Marcia Khan, his boss, went and looked at an Eichler, and we lived in an Eichler when I was going to high school. And oddly enough, this was Terra Linda. My mother got a job at the Marin County Civic Center.
Oh, you're right. Another Wright building. Yes.
Yes. So we lived in an Eichler by day, and my mom was working at the Marin County Civic Center, and I would go visit her occasionally. And I swear to God, I am not making this up. There were some buckets on the floor catching a roof leak. The building was only like 8 years old or 9 years old.
Yeah.
And there were roof leaks, but this was my first real exposure to modernist architecture. And it kind of left an imprint on me that came around later in my life. But in terms of Frank Lloyd Wright houses, well, I moved to LA from the Bay Area in 1988, and we met a friend who was a location scout, a film location scout, and he took us to the Arch Obler complex out in Malibu, which unfortunately now has been destroyed by fire. I went into that little cottage. I forget what it's called, but it was this separate small cottage that had this incredible view over the Malibu hills and down to the ocean. And it was the combination of this sort of rustic quality and the modernist lines that it just hit me. I thought, this is the most amazing architecture, because honestly, I grew up in Wyoming and Colorado. So my first loves in terms of architecture were like log cabins and the Yellowstone Lodge and the Grand Teton Lodges and camping. And it wasn't modern architecture. It was rustic American architecture. And somehow that Obler house had those qualities that I liked from my childhood, but it was modern. So in the back of my mind, I always thought, oh, this would be amazing to have a Wright house. But of course, in the Los Angeles area where we were living, they were out of my reach. But whenever a house was for sale or any of the case study houses, Neutra, Schindler, Gregory Ain, Soriano, if there were open houses, I would go to visit them. If they were for sale, I would pretend that I was going to buy one.
As we all do.
And it was Schindler eventually that just captured my attention the most. I loved every Schindler house that I was in. And there aren't that many Wright houses of course, I saw Hollyhock and everything, but it was the Usonian period. It was the later Frank Lloyd Wright houses that appealed to me more than the Prairie houses. I mean, in retrospect, I've grown to love the early period too, but it was the modern post-Fallingwater, post-Usonian period that I loved. So I would look online, look at listings of houses and just sort of fantasize until in 2008, I saw a listing for this house in Iowa, and he was asking all of $185,000 for this house. And at that time, you could maybe buy a postage stamp lot in Los Angeles for that price. So I kind of bought it sight unseen. I saw
really.
Well, basically, yeah. I said, look, I want to buy this house. Hold it for me. I said, I'll put down as much money as you want. And he said, the seller was like, that's okay. I trust you. So I came out and looked at it. I told him if there was anything glaringly wrong, that we would have the right to back out of the deal. And he said, that's fine. So we got this house with 2 1/3 acres and a wonderful Usonian house in kind of the middle of nowhere in Iowa for $185,000. And It did need work, but the basic footprint was completely intact. There had been no major alterations. It was just missing a lot of its original details. But that's sort of the shorter version of all of this leading up to buying the house.
Well, that is a fantastic story. I mean, you're just living the dream, man. You're just going for it.
Well, we did. And a lot of the housing discrepancy, especially at that time between the Midwest and the major cities, was so great that it was like buying a house in a different country.
Yeah.
Yeah. After we actually bought the house, then the fun began. We needed to do, or I wanted to do, a complete restoration of this place. And we were still living in Los Angeles. So that meant going back and forth between Los Angeles and Oskaloosa, Iowa.
I guess you fly into the Oskaloosa International Airport?
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah. By way of Denver first and then Des Moines. You know, we lived in Altadena. In fact, our house burned down in the Altadena fire, our former house that we had in LA. And that was a sad situation. But we were so far from the airport that we would have to get up at about 4 a.m. to get to the LA airport. Then we'd fly from LA to Denver, change planes, fly to Des Moines, and then rent a car to go to our house in Oskaloosa. We could have easily gone to anywhere in Europe for the same amount of time that it took. But we began this restoration, and I found an amazing craftsman, artisan in Minneapolis. There wasn't anybody locally who I thought was capable of undertaking this project, but this fellow in Minneapolis was willing to drive 5 hours down to Oskaloosa to begin this restoration process. And so from 2008 to 2011, I was flying back and forth and he was driving back and forth, and we began the restoration of the Lambertson house.
So you really are making a dream come true here for yourself. And I suspect there are a lot of our listeners who would love to have this same journey to buy a Frank Lloyd Wright house somewhere, because there's still a lot of them left.
Yeah.
What advice would you give a new homeowner who's going to go for it?
Well, to go for a Wright house, what's happened is since the UNESCO designation, and also it's the internet and everything, it's easy now to live in a somewhat, we actually don't live in the house. We live in Chicago and go back and forth, but it's easier now to pull off something like this. But my advice is, if you're not really passionate about Wright, just get a nice mid-century house somewhere in the suburbs or something. But if you're passionate about it, it'll happen for you. You have to be very patient. I always think of it as like owning a vintage car or something. You have to be willing to wait to get that part. And if it means getting that part made, so be it. These things are not off the shelf. You have to have a lot of custom work done. But having said that, the Usonian houses, the materials are relatively simple. You have concrete floors, brick or stone exterior walls, and glass and wood. But it just takes wanting it. And of course, now it's become very expensive. So if you're going to do the restoration, you have to be prepared to have the resources to pull it off. If you can do the work yourself, that would be the ultimate. I didn't dare. My carpentry skills were, like a handsaw and a miter box, basically.
Yeah, that's about the level of my skills, too.
Yeah. Being a musician, too, I didn't want to go anywhere near a table saw. I had heard too many nightmare stories. So do your research first. Read as much as you can about these houses. And it might be that if you think you want a Frank Lloyd Wright house, you might find that it'll take you down the path of finding a more regional architect who was doing very, very interesting stuff that is sort of related to Wright. And you can pick up those houses for a lot less money. And sometimes, the student matches or surpasses the master. So
right.
be willing to get something not just for the name, but for the quality of the architecture. There are just so many great architects who, especially in the mid-century, who were influenced by Wright, influenced by Mies. Those are kind of the two directions that you can kind of look in American architecture, and it kind of branches out from there. So just keep your eyes open.
Are there any houses that are on your bucket list that you still want to see?
Well, I'm going to the Frank Lloyd Wright Building Conservancy Conference in September, and I will be seeing Falling Water for the first time in Kentuck Knob. I have yet to see these two houses, and I've seen a lot of Wright houses. I go to most of the Conservancy tours, but I just haven't been to Pennsylvania to see any of that. So that's definitely the immediate bucket list. In the long term, I want to go to Europe and see some Le Corbusier places. I mean, that's a separate interest of mine.
Make sure when you go to Pennsylvania, you stop in at Polymath Park, which is a whole collection of houses.
Oh, that's on the tour. That'll be on the tour. Yes, some of these houses have been moved from other sites. They were in flood zones, or there was encroachment by commerce. I think there are, like 4 houses there, 4 or 5.
They're expanding all the time.
Yeah, I can't keep track of it.
Well, Peter, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's a pleasure to talk with you, and I'm so glad that you got your dream fulfilled.
Oh, thank you. It's a dream without an end, because some of the things that we repaired right when we got the house are already now in need of some maintenance. So it's an ongoing thing. It's never done.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you, George.
That was George with Peter Maunu.
The youngest licensed architect in the United States is University of Kansas graduate Emily Almloff. She's wanted to be an architect since she was 16, and after graduating in 2024, she successfully completed all 6 parts of the architect registration examination in January and February 2025, 1 examination per week, and she's only 22. It's people like Emily that make you realize how little you've accomplished. For example, when Mozart was my age, he had been dead for 28 years. Welcome to the show, Emily.
Thank you.
Emily, help me here with the math, because I've been trying to compute this. So you're 22. It's a 5-year master's program. It's a 4-year undergraduate, which places you at entering college at 13. But something's not right with my calculations. When did you start this higher education process?
So I started taking architecture classes when I was 16, and that helped me knock out the first year of classes while I was in high school. And then KU also has an accelerated program. So it's 5 years for the master's and undergrad combined.
Okay. So you merged it all together.
Yes.
Now, the other thing I can't figure out mathematically is it says here in your bio that you worked 3,740 hours during the same process, which, according to my calculations, is basically full-time for almost 2 years while going to school. Like, did you sleep?
Not a lot, but I was able to get a lot of them through summer internships and then working part-time throughout the school year. And another cool thing about KU's program is your 5th year, you are working full-time. And that's while you do a thesis. So that knocked out 1 of the years. And the other 6 months I got while I was working post-graduation until March. And then the rest of it through summer internships while I was in school.
Okay. Well, have you been surprised at all the publicity that has gone out about you in this last couple of months?
Yeah, it's a little overwhelming.
How did it originally happen? Was it a press release from your firm, or how did the world find out about this?
I offhandedly mentioned something to a coworker because I thought it was just funny.
Oh, never do that. Never mention something to a coworker.
I know. And she told other people, and then my firm asked me if they could do a press release, and then word got out.
So I know you were featured by the AIA, and what podcasts have you been on so far?
Architect, which is for women in the architecture, engineering, and construction industries, and then this one. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure Julia Gamelina of Madam Architect will be knocking on your door at some point or another. Now, what kind of projects are you working on in healthcare? Is this hospitals, retirement, emergency centers? What kinds of structures?
A lot of rural health. We work on a lot of hospitals in rural America. So some of the systems that we do have to assume that that is the only facility that a person can access because oftentimes it is, or it's the only one within a 3 or 5 hour driving radius. So a lot of rural healthcare and some equipment replacement projects within existing hospitals as well.
I remember visiting 10 years ago a hospital called Ashkenazi, which had a green roof and patients could go up there and walk around, and it had a Starbucks in the lobby. And I thought this was just fantastic. It was like a place I would want to go visit. So what's state of the art for hospitals now in 2025? What are they doing that's new and interesting?
I think a lot of the technology that we're able to implement, new equipment, all of that stuff is new. There's a big push for more sustainable hospitals as well, which is really exciting because healthcare is a big industry. So if we can be more sustainable in healthcare, that's a wonderful thing. Smaller pushes in those general directions, which isn't as cool as a green roof, but it can include green roofs, but some of the stuff is cool to read about and see.
So when you talk about sustainability, is that in the construction of the building or the operational practices of the medical staff day to day to day?
I think it's both, but oftentimes we have less say over more of the internal processes, although sometimes the buildings can influence that. A lot of it is construction, but sometimes changes in processes can reduce how much water or waste a hospital produces. But then again, so much of healthcare for sterilization or cleanliness, like you have to throw out your gloves every time. And of course, we want them to do that and stuff like that, where that's required. And we have to build systems that do that, which is good. But maybe we can offset some of that needed waste with how the building is built in a sustainable way, especially if we can do it in a way so that they have a hospital that can flex to whatever their needs are in 10, 20 years, and they don't have to tear it down and build a whole new one in the next 15 years.
When you were in school doing this, it seems like you had a very solid vision for certainly being an architect. How did you pick the healthcare sector to specialize in?
There are a lot of really cool people at KU who like to tell us about healthcare. And since we have a healthcare specific program, Ken Sperkelmeyer and Frank Zohm were leading that program. And the way they talked about healthcare as something that can make people's lives just a little bit easier. If you're either a patient or you're working there or you're the family of a patient, making their experience just a little bit nicer by making it less confusing to find where your loved one is staying or adding a window in your room next to your bed, just things like that. And I really thought about it. And that is the kind of thing that I would like to do. That's the kind of thing that I think a lot of people would like to do. So that really inspired me to follow in their footsteps.
So what features would you like to persuade a hospital board of directors to incorporate in their new facility?
More natural light. That's always such a big thing. And it reduces risk of infection, actually. And that's crazy. Like, I don't understand how that works. But in the end, it can even end up saving the hospital money. But it just makes everybody's experience so much nicer. If you're a nurse and you're working and you don't see the sun for pretty much your whole shift, like you're probably not going to do your job as well as if you are able to see the sun and your circadian rhythm can be normal and feel natural. And if you're a patient who's recovering in a room, studies have shown that recovery happens so much faster if you have access to natural light. So yeah. More natural light and more connection to the outdoors.
Okay, so I'm in an 8-story hospital tower on D wing. I'm a nurse. I'm surrounded by rooms. I got no windows. I got nothing around me. So architecturally, how do you fix these core spaces inside of these hospitals where people are sitting around all day and don't get to see much light.
Sometimes that can be negated by adding more windows in core spaces like hallways so that natural light can even indirectly reach all of these people as they move about their day. We try whenever possible to not put a nurse's station somewhere where they just have no connection at all to the outdoors. But yeah, sometimes that isn't possible. So in situations like that, even adding a window in a break room or adding windows in waiting areas or reception spaces where nurses still would be able to access them throughout the day. Not ideal, but something.
Right. Is it practical to have light shafts that go down through a building that can provide at least some sort of additional exposure?
Yeah, that's also a really great option, something that we would like to see more, or a central courtyard.
What do you look forward to in your job, Emily? I mean, you've got this vast horizon ahead of you.
There's so much to know. I know very little about the world of healthcare still, and I'm really excited to learn more and be more of a help to the world of healthcare and everything that all of those staff do in their day-to-day jobs. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Well, congratulations. It's really quite an achievement. You are the world record holder, I believe, right now, displacing someone who got on the scene in January. But we'll see what happens over the next few months. But I'm looking forward to seeing your new career. Thanks for coming on the show, Emily.
Thank you for having me.
That was George with Emily Almloff. Daniel Hall, a member of the group Danger Hall, is a drummer, teacher, and studio musician based in Carrboro, North Carolina. After starting on piano, he begged his way into a drum kit and studied with the legendary John Henry in Illinois. Since moving to Chapel Hill in 2000, Daniel has played with countless groups, including a 3-year stint with the Countdown Quartet. Fellow Danger Hall member Peter Lamb is a saxophonist, composer, and arranger known for his wild stage presence and his inventive, genre-bending approach to jazz. Here's our conversation with Daniel Hall and Peter Lamb of Danger Hall.
Peter, welcome back.
Thanks, George. Thanks for having me.
I think this is like your 4th or 5th time on the show. You're one of our original musical guests.
Right on.
With Peter Lamb and the Wolves.
Yep.
And now you've got a new venture going on here with Daniel Hall. What is this all about?
This is a band that Dan and I and Steve Grootman and Shepard Lane have put together called Danger Hall. Danger Hall is Steve Danger and Dan Hall. That's the.
That answers that question.
There's the answer to your question. And I don't know really who the boss of the band is, but it's not me, which is really lovely.
It's a nice democracy.
Yeah.
It's a collective.
It is a collective.
Yeah.
It's a co-op.
It actually started as Danger Hall, Lamb, and Lane, but then that was a little too much like a law firm, so we shortened it.
I think they'd be great. Law firms, could use some pizzazz, right?
That's
Right.
true.
Oh, man.
If it goes that
a
way.
law firm that also plays.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah,
But,
We
but
can
they
have
have
your divorce or your rhythm.
no doubt.
but to have a band name that starts with an adjective and then has a noun,
Yeah.
you can stop right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And what kind of music, Dan, does a band play?
Well, I would say maybe our strongest asset is its very unique sound.
Yeah.
And a big part of that is we have a pedal steel player, Shepard Lane.
Oh.
So we're all steeped in the jazz world. Saxophone, Peter's obviously, and I'm a drummer, and then Steve's our bass player. And the pedal steel kind of gives us a different sonic palette, different feel. We don't have a guitar or a piano.
Or a vocalist.
So that gives us a lot of space to be really creative and unique with our sound.
And you're writing your own material?
Somewhat, yeah, mostly. Mostly, yes.
Yeah, we have like 1 or 2 covers, but really we have a lot of originals. And Steve writes, I write, and then Dan and Shepard also write. We rehearse almost once a week, and we kind of write stuff together. We'll come up with I'll have a little riff idea, and Steve will have a little thing, and Dan will be like, this is the groove it should be. And yeah, and then the pedal steel kind of almost sounds like it's just such a different vibe than anything I've ever heard. I've never heard a band that sounds like this, which I really like.
Yeah, it's part Hawaiian, part country.
Yeah.
And then some of the melody patterns are almost Middle Eastern.
Yeah. Yep.
You're right. I've never heard anything like it.
It's neat, huh? Yeah.
Tell me about this first song, Blue Sync.
Blue Sync was written by Steve Grootman. He's our bass player. We all played together in this Countdown Quartet quite a while ago, so this is a nice reunion for us. But Blue Sink, I think, references a swimming pool that Steve swam in when he was a kid. And it's basically like the feeling I get is just like total beauty, relaxation, light, water, you know. And so that's the feeling we try to go for there. We just recorded it recently. And so whenever you record a song, you basically hear it, you play it a few times, you hear it back, and you get a whole new take on the architecture of the song, the shape of the song. And so it gets shaped better and better as we go. And so I think it took a really nice, natural feel.
Here's Danger Hall with Blue Sink.
Sounds good.
So yeah, one thing to know, we just recorded, I think 7 tracks at Ryan's place. Is that right?
8 if you include Home on the Range.
Okay, yeah. And
Is that the old Home on the Range or something new called Home on the Range?
It's the old Home on the Range.
Wow. With the deer and the antelope play?
where Sodom is heard is during discouraging word.
Peter sings the melody very beautifully, and it's a little rubato, you know.
And it's true, Dan and I and Steve were in a band, 30 years ago, maybe?
25, I would say. Yeah, not to be specific.
The Countdown Quartet.
I remember seeing you guys playing around town. Yeah.
And we were pretty well known. And then Dan left to become a rock star. He moved in with the Old Ceremony. And then he became a country western star. He toured with Chatham County Line all over the world for many years.
It's the drummer's life.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, we have a really steep history, and we're all really good friends. So
I couldn't be happier than I am right now. I love playing with you, and I love playing with this band. So,
yeah, me too.
Get a room.
Yeah, well, hey, we're just trying to keep the vibe good.
Hey, this room. You got a table. Right here.
There's a table. No, come on.
So what is the name of the new album?
We don't know, and we're not sure how we're releasing it yet.
Okay.
So it will probably be a trickle down release where we release a couple every week or every other week until it becomes an album. We're still in the mixing mastering stage still.
Okay, that's cool.
But what we sent you are 2 tracks that we think are mixed and mastered, so we're probably done.
We kind of live in a singles world, you know what I mean? So, but at the end of the releases, it'd be great we're going to put the whole thing out with artwork, concept.
So albums are just so old school, huh?
Well, we love albums. I have a record player, and it's a big part of how I listen to music. And that would be the goal, to release that way. But practically speaking, people
Easier to do it this way.
hear one song, and that's yeah.
Also, you just get more traction. Like if you release a song, I was almost against this, and Dan convinced me. But if you release a song every other week or so, it grabs people's attention, and they get hungry for the next one. And if you just release it all at once, then it's done.
Right. It's like TV shows. Right now they're doing them one at a time.
Totally.
Every week.
Yeah.
Get you going instead of dropping them all at once.
Right.
That's right.
Right, and then you can't binge it.
Yeah.
We're trying to be with the rhythm of the times, you know.
Tell me about this second song, Sparse Arse.
Peter, that's all you.
I wrote this song. I think I wrote it right when we first started rehearsing.
Yeah, I don't know when you wrote it, but I remember when you presented it, which was like a year ago.
Yeah.
And we played it, and it just plays itself. It's a beautiful melody.
Thanks.
It works, you know.
Yeah. When I write, I either write a melody first or I write chord changes. And this one I wrote the changes, which is what the rhythm section is playing. And then I wrote the melody to that. And it was so open sounding that I called it Sparse Arse, which I think is funny.
Here we go. Here's Danger Hall with Sparse Arse.
The whole album is like remarkably good. Everyone I've played it for, including like members of my band, Peter Lemon and the Wolves, they all just think like, wow, what is this? I've never heard this before. It's different and interesting, and I like it. And I'm just excited to see what happens.
I love the range of the songs. You know, working with a lot of different people, sometimes you get in a spot, you know, this band does this really well. I feel like we have a really nice range, you know.
Are you home on the range?
We are home on the range.
Are the deer and antelope?
Yes, no doubt.
And we're playing a lot in the area, I would say. We're probably playing 2 or 3 times a month, and every time we do, the band just gets more juicy.
We had a guy, Daniel Hall. Mm-hmm. He's a rapper. Same name as me. It's really interesting. But he's from Detroit, Michigan, and he came into one of our gigs and sat in, and we played a David Bowie song, Ashes to Ashes, and he just started rapping, and it was amazing.
It was magical.
Amazing. So we are going to keep recording, and we're going to record that cover version with him on there.
Where can people see you perform?
So we have a show that was filmed at the venue, the Sharp 9 in Durham, which was voted by Downbeat Magazine as one of the top jazz venues in the country.
Oh, it's great.
And every show that happens there is filmed and put on YouTube. And so if you want to see us and hear us, you can absolutely do so on YouTube if you just put in Danger Hall and Sharp 9 in your search. But then we also play at the Moon Room in Raleigh about once a month.
It's a great place.
Mm-hmm. It's in downtown Raleigh. And then we play at Rebus Works in Raleigh about once a month. Mm-hmm. And then we have a website, dangerhall.com, with all of our dates on it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is awesome, guys. I really wish the best for you. Your sound is amazing.
Thank you, George.
Thank you so much, George.
Thank you for coming in.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for everything you do, man.
It's a total pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by Diane Bald and the Budman family, restoring significant architecture in Toronto, Los Angeles, Malibu, and Palm Springs. Okay, Tom.
Visit usmodernist.org's massive archives to listen to past shows, discover documentation of 25,000 significant modernist houses, and access 5 million pages of classic 20th century architecture magazines. U.S. Modernist Radio is produced by Soundtracks Recording Studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. Our theme song was performed by George Smart and Robinson Earl, with guest research by Bobby Morris. Got a guest to suggest for our show? Write her at bobby@usmodernist.org. U.S. Modernist Radio is a production of Modernist Archive Incorporated, a nonprofit educational archive for the documentation, preservation, and promotion of modernist residential design. I'm Tom Guild. George and I'll be back soon with another Formica is the New Reclaimed Wood edition of U.S. Modernist Radio.